What's good, party people? Happy Saturday to everybody out there. Saturday, January 5th. Oh man, we're gonna have some fun today. We're gonna talk a little more about the savior of the left, the wonderful and majestic Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and kind of some reactions to the truly insane things she's been saying, and objectively insane. I've heard, a bunch of people compare like Trump derangement syndrome to Ocasio-Cortez derangement syndrome, and this is a symptom of the kind of moral relativism that you see out there, the moral equivalency of pointing out the ridiculousness of socialism and the tens of millions of deaths it's caused, along with its close intermingling cousin there, communism. Comparing that with, the ridiculousness of Trump's personality. So that's the difference between Trump derangement syndrome and Ocasio-Cortez derangement syndrome. There's no derangement when you're talking about the reaction to Ocasio-Cortez, because the reaction is appropriate to how ridiculous her propositions are for policy ideas. Now, that's what makes Trump derangement syndrome is Trump's policy recommendations and what he wants to actually do with the country don't match up with the reaction to what he's done. Everybody's reaction is the aesthetics of his personality and his behavior. It's not the actual potential tyrannical murderousness of his ideology that people are reacting to. So therein lies the difference. We're going to get into that a little bit. Share this out on Facebook. Talking Ocasio-Cortez nonsense. Let's see. Let's get shared out on Facebook here. Ooh. All right, we'll share it out on the Facebook. Figured I'd give them a little description of what I'm talking about, because the Facebook shares, people just see the stream in general and then they're like, what is he talking about? It's probably more alt-right talking points. How evil of him. Because, the alt-right is simultaneously encompasses libertarians, conservatives, and Nazis, you see, because it's all in the same pool of thought there. Never mind that libertarians actually argue for a small government. What that really means, in coded language that MSNBC helps you decode, is that libertarians want tyrannical dictatorship. That's what they really want when they say they want small government. When they say they want to get rid of the Federal Reserve. What that really is a subtle dog whistle to white supremacy. Very important that you get these codes and understand them thoroughly. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to correctly identify what these alt-right Looney Tunes people are really saying. Oh, how we doing on a Saturday, ladies and gentlemen? It's cold and cloudy in LA. I was hoping to get a little more sun today. Sinuses are a little clogged up, you know, but we out here making it happen. Had a bunch of espresso. I'm all hopped up, you know. But yeah, I was talking a little bit about Miss Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez yesterday, and she's come out and doubled down on her Green New Deal plan to radically increase the taxation and government involvement in the economy. What could be better than letting a bunch of career bureaucrats who've never actually ran any functioning system in their life or created anything of value in their life? They operate on stolen money. Let's have them take over an even bigger piece of the pie, and because bureaucrats know how to spend your money better than you do. That's the fundamental assumption of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's got those big bug eyes, and she sees more than you do. She sees more of reality than you do, and that's why she gets to have your money extracted from you, and she gets to put it towards government-funded healthcare and schooling. And anybody who went to public school knows, you know, that the government knows how to indoctrinate people properly, and that's what we need to do in this society. It's very important that we have free, you know, we have more public schools, we have free college education, because it's not theft if you call it free, right? And there's no moral element to it. It's free. And you know, that sounds nice, which is all that your argument requires if you're trying to convince the left of your position. Does it sound good? Does it piss off the right? 100%. We're behind it. I think we need to have less people go to college. I think it's very important to not go in and be indoctrinated by leftist professors. Like, I've seen statistics where like 20% of college professors openly identify as communists, which not many professors feel comfortable openly identifying as Nazis, which shows you the real power of the quote-unquote alt-right. It's taken its grip on the country. But meanwhile, you have literal communist politicians elected to government, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders, and they have a lot of young, dumb supporters who don't understand economics, and they're viewed as totally legitimate. We just ignore all of the democide that's happened in history under communist regimes because, you know, it sounds nice and it pisses off the right. So the left doesn't worry about those troubling things like moral principles or, you know, consistency. That all gets in the way of sounding nice and pissing off the right. So that's all that you require. But yeah. So she kind of doubled down on the position there, And I was reading Drudge Report here. It has a little headline: Ocasio-Cortez raised tax rates on the super rich to 70%. Now, doesn't that sound nice? You know, because you and me, we're not the super rich, so it's not going to affect us. Yeah, buddy, diversity syrup. Okay, we make it thick here. You're going to need 4 stomachs like a bovine, like Elton John, in order to process it. And Ocasio-Cortez can process some diversity syrup, okay, because she's not white, and she's a communist. And so she's just built different genetically. And white people, that's why they're not down with the communist agenda. This has nothing to do with IQ or an understanding of economics. It's just whether or not you can guzzle a full bottle of diversity syrup in one gulp. You just got to open your throat there and take in the communist agenda. And, it's going to help. So she came out and said, oh, we got to raise these tax rates on the super rich to 70%. Now, here's a little thing about the super rich, ladies and gentlemen. See, they have resources to live wherever they want. And so, if the country they are currently living in passes through legislation that is going to tax them 70%, here's what the super rich are going to do. And their helicopter starts up, and they fly off to the Cayman Islands, to Puerto Rico, to whatever island paradise that they choose instead of living in America. And see, where those taxes go is they then, see, the left doesn't believe in trickle-down economics, but here's trickle-down taxes on the rich. Here's what happens with trickle-down when you try to tax the super rich. They leave, and those taxes trickle down to, you guessed it, the middle class. And they end up paying all the taxes, which is what happens anyway, which is what always happens, because the super rich are super rich for a reason. They know how to not have their money taken away from them. They lobby for tax breaks, they get political affiliations, they have all these write-offs that they know how to do, because they're smart, because they have a bunch of money. And so you're not just going to take their money and use it to fund your communist revolution. It's just, some of them may hang around because they may leech onto the system and be able to profit directly from it, but they are not going to be the ones paying that tax burden. It's going to trickle down into the middle class. There's going to be riots in the streets, just like in France. And that's what happens when you try to institute these government policies by force that people don't want. They're either going to leave or they're going to riot. And so it's like this infantile, childlike mind state where it's like, we don't like the super rich, so they just exploited their way to the top, and so, ooh, we're gonna get them with a 70% tax. It's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. They will be fleeing the country with the quickness. And then you have the most intelligent and productive people all fleeing your country, and what are you left with? You don't get any more innovation. You just get a giant tyrannical government that is now fleecing the middle class and pretending they know how to run society and allocate resources. And you get no more innovation, and you get a society that's eating itself through a big incompetent government system. So that's the future, brought to you by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And but if you listen to Scott Adams, you know, Ocasio-Cortez derangement syndrome is, you know, it's equivalent to Trump derangement syndrome, because instituting an economic agenda that bankrupts the country and sends all of the most successful innovators out of the country, and advocates for open borders, bringing in a bunch of low IQ third world populations. That's equivalent to being triggered by Trump's personality and his shit talking on Twitter. That's equivalent. The outrage is equivalent on both sides. So don't get mad at Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for wanting to collapse your economy for the sake of a moron ideology like socialism. Don't get triggered by the ignorance of that. Yeah, I don't know. It's not being triggered, it's being aghast and amazed that the population can be this propagandized and stupid to for that kind of program to have any kind of support. It's a testament to the wonderful government propaganda out there in the public schools, because you're always taught that people left to their own devices are kind of evil, and you know, it's a race to the bottom, and they can't be trusted, and so it's always the government coming in, swooping in like Captain Bureaucrat Underpants and saving the day from peaceful people making voluntary interactions in capitalism. That can't be allowed, because, you know, dumb people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez can't compete in the free market, and so what they need to do is worm their way into the bureaucracy where they can enact their beta nerdy revenge on the people who actually know how to produce things and make value in society, by trying to tax them at 70%. And hate to tell you, nobody who falls into that 70% tax bracket is going to be hanging around to enjoy it. With one fell swoop, you can turn the United States into a third world country. That's the only difference between the United States and third world country, is the top end IQ people who produce things and make all of our lives that much more efficient and easier. And those are the people that we want to take 70% of their income and let bug-eyed Cortez make all the decisions. So yeah. Excuse me, I gotta clear the sinuses, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, that's my Ocasio-Cortez derangement syndrome acting up there. I'm having an immune response to the stupidity of socialism. Excuse me. Oh. White blood cells engaged to eradicate this this murderous ideology from my imagination here. Hopefully it stays in my imagination, and the population and the people in Congress are not dumb enough to actually support radical final solution here. Final solution to the existence of Western society and civilization. That's what it is. It's the the nail in the coffin when we try to tax the super rich at 70% and end up bankrupting the middle class and collapsing the whole damn thing. So let's see here. It's just this praising of blatant idiocy. It's just like, man, it really does not inspire hope in the intelligence of the population, dude. It's, it's a scary proposition that's getting any traction. It's like the glee in just pissing off anybody who actually understands economics and wants any kind of prosperity for the country. Yeah, let's see. And of course, this woman, I don't even know how to pronounce her name, new Congresswoman Tlaib, goes off on Trump. And top of Drudge Report here. Quote, "We're going to impeach the motherfucker." And then I guess some commentary here. Trump has met his match. That's he's met his match. Not with an opposing argument from the left or anybody pointing out objectively what's going wrong with the Trump agenda. It's just, we're going to find a way to impeach him some way, and we're going to call him a motherfucker. So look out for that. We don't actually need to find out any laws that have been broken or anything of that nature. It's just, you call him a motherfucker and then you impeach him. Two-step process, very simple. And she uses a conversation with her son, apparently, this is her argument against the Trump agenda. Her son says, "Look, Mama, you won. Bullies don't win." And she says, and I said, "Baby, they don't, because we're going to go in there and impeach the motherfucker." Okay, she's one of the first two Muslim women to be sworn in as members of Congress. Yeah. So making the Muslim population look real intelligent right there. You don't need any arguments or any evidence or anything like that. It's just, we're going to impeach the motherfucker, and then you get a trillion retweets on Twitter because public school does not teach you how to think. I think President Trump has met his match. Record flood at border, top of Drudge Report here. Have y'all been feeling the pain of the government shutdown there? Has it been catastrophic in your life? And there was a graph on the Donald that I was looking at earlier. It was like, guide to understanding the government shutdown. Have they stopped taking tax money out of your check? No. Well, then the government is not shut down. So it's all political theater. Oh, excuse me there. But yeah, this is this is hilarious. Okay, so after years of Trump's dire warnings, a crisis has hit the border, but generates little urgency. With both sides entrenched, there's been little bipartisan urgency to examine the relatively narrow set of legal and administrative changes that could potentially make a difference in slowing illegal migration or improving conditions for families who arrive at the border. Yeah, Trump is he's going hard with that wall negotiation there. It's seems like he's committed to keeping the shutdown going. I'm not even clear what constitutes government shutdown. Does that just mean Congress can't pass a budget on their spending? I guess would be the thing, and so that's why the shutdown happens, because they can't reach a budget agreement, right? They can't decide on how to spend our stolen money properly. And so, how about we? Can they decide to not spend it? Can we have a refund here? Possibly a receipt. So Trump tweet here: the Democrats could solve the shutdown problem in a very short period of time. All they have to do is approve real border security, including a wall, something which everyone, other than drug dealers, human traffickers, and criminals, want very badly. Many people currently a part of my opposition, including President Obama and the Dems, have had campaign violations, in some case for very large sums of money. Blah, blah, blah. Great support coming from all sides for border security on our very dangerous southern border. Teams negotiating this weekend. The Washington Post and NBC reporting of events, including fake sources, has been very inaccurate, to put it mildly. So, we elected Donald Trump. 63 million people voted for him. He very plainly campaigned on building a wall, and yet it has not happened yet. But, you know, the left is all for democracy, of course. I think democracy is a terrible, horrific system in the abstract, but in comparison to everything else in the world, it's not that bad, but it plainly doesn't work. It plainly doesn't work when you elect someone to do something and then the other side just obstructs, and nothing gets done. But, you know, it's looked at as Americans are racist for wanting to build a wall. But the Great Wall of China is majestic and beautiful. The wall that Israel has between them and Palestine is, nobody ever talks about that. You can't blame Jews for wanting to secure their own country. But white people in America, now that's a different story. If you're talking about a wall in America, well, that just means that you're hateful. And preserving Western civilization, very hateful. That's the narrative that they've spun and they've convinced people of, partially because of the historical misunderstandings for what happened in the original the original people that came over on boats from Europe, and painting them as these evil, oppressive colonizers, and saying that this is a, quote, nation of immigrants, ignoring the fact that they didn't actually immigrate to a nation. It was more of a big patch of dirt that had, hundreds of warring Indian tribes on it, and no direct settled nation. There were a bunch of warring tribes, and the Europeans showed up on boats and were just kind of better at every aspect of building a civilization than the Native Americans, and also happened to carry some communicable diseases there that wiped out 90% of the Native Americans without any intentional battles having to be fought. It's a battle of communicable diseases there that the Native Americans lost, but that's spun as the Native American genocide by the immigrants from Europe. I mean, if anything, you would say, no, it's colonizing land that hasn't been developed into any kind of civilization isn't immigration. And but that's the kind of narrative that's spun, that white people are just are oppressive, and we don't pay any attention to the fact that I heard this on Stephen Moni's podcast today. This since 800 BC, from 800 BC to 1950 AD, 98% of scientific advancements have been from white people. But we don't pay the attention to the innovations that birthed the smallest government and most prosperous nation the world's ever seen. No. What that does not mean, that's, if you want to preserve that, that's textbook racism. And we're going to tax you at 70%. And that's your that's your thanks for your innovations. So yeah, and you can't have open borders and a welfare state at the same time. It's just not feasible. It's not long term or short term at all. It's just you're setting yourself up for demographic replacement and setting up the demise for any well-functioning, moderately high IQ society. Because the people that immediately come in to the country illegally and get on welfare, not the most high IQ individuals, they're going to be able to contribute to a modern technological society like America is now. And you know that they can't compete in the economy because they do come in and get on welfare, because it's not beneficial to come in, and you're not going to need to come in and get on welfare if you can immediately come in and provide value in the economy. Whereas if you didn't have the welfare state, they would have to come in and immediately contribute to the economy, or they would go broke and have to go home. But you get the welfare state along with open borders, then it lets people who couldn't otherwise compete in the economy come in, set up their own cultural enclaves. They don't have to assimilate to the culture. They don't really have to learn the language. They can kind of just skate by and use the government leech system to feed them, and it's a huge drain on the economy. It's terrible, especially for the lower income sector of the job force, because then all those positions that on the welfare state that should be used as an absolute last resort for the people that are like now destitute, homeless on the streets, are taken in by third world immigrants that have no possibility of contributing anything to the economy anyway, because they're not going to assimilate to the culture and join it. So instead, you see, people who've grown up in America on the streets starving. So until they can radically cut down the size of the welfare state, I think a wall is a good short-term solution. And 63 million people who voted for Donald Trump agree, but we can't spare that $5 billion to get it up and running, ladies and gentlemen. How we doing out there on a Saturday? I'm feeling a little, I wish I could have got some sun today, but Krishna consciousness. What's up, Kashava? He says, have you heard of Krishna consciousness? No, I assume it has something to do with Hinduism or Buddhism. I have studied a lot of Buddhist philosophy and listened to a lot of Alan Watts, and seen a lot of documentaries and read a lot on Buddhism and stuff. So I understand their principles and stuff. But Krishna consciousness, no. It wasn't. Yeah, it was kind of too subjective, I think. The Buddhist philosophies are too subjective. It's all about your. There's some value in it, as far as like getting your own mind state in order and clarifying your own ways of thinking, whatever. I'm from Oklahoma, but I live in Hollywood. But as far as understanding the world, and there's nothing objective about it, because it's all about managing your own mind state and like getting in this supreme consciousness of it's all about staying in the moment, right, and not being caught up in the past or the anxiety in the future. And there's value in that, but there's no moral content to it. That's why it's weird to me that it's considered a religion. What's up, Proxnoid? Rice Krishna for breakfast. I don't know what the fuck that is. Prabhupada lectures? What are the lectures about? What are they talking about? Because I find that a lot of people who are really into Buddhism can't make a stand on anything. It's always about a little bit of the yin, a little bit of the yang, and we're on the middle way. We're in the middle way in life, and so I just sit on the fence of every issue. And so I don't think it lends itself necessarily to objective truths that are crucial for, because I feel like a lot of people are lost in this wash of subjectivity and you know, considering all perspectives equally. And what we need is moral clarity, as in the government is an illegitimate institution because they steal our tax money. And if it's illegal for, if it's bad for the citizens to steal, it's bad for the government to steal as well. And we need that striking moral clarity of consistency to cut through the horseshit and wake people up to why people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are abhorrent, monstrous idiots that can't be allowed to wield their childlike tantrum mentalities on the rest of society. So, I did do a lot of there's meditation, and there's reading about the philosophies of Buddhism. It's just, I don't know, it didn't have a lot of value for me. It kind of can lead you along a path of well-being and feeling good about yourself, but at some point you got to get out and communicate the truth to people and try to help the world. You can't just sit in your apartment and meditate like Sam Harris and think you're accomplishing anything. Because, life isn't all about feeling good. Sometimes you're going to have your sinuses stuffed up and you want to do a live stream, and you got to push your way through it, ladies and gentlemen. You got to drink some bubble water and hope it breaks that stuff up. Sometimes the truth is going to hurt people's feelings. But that's the other thing I wanted to talk about as soon as I clear the pathways here, is moral relativism. And it kind of goes in with the whole spirituality and religion and this kind of murky morality that happens and leads to the growing of the government, which is what has happened. So I'm going to talk about that moral relativism and how people use the negative adjectives to label people who have objective ethics as like they're bad. So what we need desperately is objective ethics that we can all agree on, but the power structure desperately does not want objective ethics to be agreed upon. That's why fomenting religious difference and cultural difference, and that's the whole divide and conquer strategy. Because if we ever come together and form a kind of objective ethic that we can all agree on, that spells doom for the power structure, who relies on fomenting our differences, dividing us, and keeping us divided and dependent on the state. So the things that help this kind of purveyance and division is the moral relativism. So there's no objective ethic according to these people. There's no objective right and wrong. It's kind of just subjective perceptions and being nice. It's seen as nice and virtuous to just be tolerant of other people's perspectives, and there's no analysis of the intellectual content of other people's perspectives. It's another person's perspective, so you have to be tolerant of that perspective and be nice and don't be an asshole by telling people they're wrong. So what you end up with is you end up like Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, while it's a good quality for an interviewer not to generally take sides, it's a terrible quality for critical thinking. Like, people confuse not taking a side with critical thinking. Oh, you can examine the devil's advocate, and you kind of play both sides, and oh, he's a critical thinker. It is critical thinking to be able to argue the opposite side of your position. That's really important. You need to be able to like, I fully understand the perspective of the left, that they view themselves as compassionate, and they view the government as something that protects people in society from exploitation. But it's kind of like God in the Old Testament. Like, religious people look at God in the Old Testament and they exempt him from the rules that he holds for everybody else. So it's not an objective standard that murder is wrong, if God can flood the entire planet anytime he wants. So it doesn't apply to him. He's exempted. Okay. The left exempts the government from being able to, from the principle stealing is wrong. So theft is wrong, and theft is objectively wrong, and so we have to hold the government to that same standard. And that's why Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is so insane, because if we're going to hold society to that standard that theft is wrong, the number one imperative has to be reducing the size of government, because that's the biggest. And if you just go by the non-aggression principle, that's the biggest violation of the non-aggression principle in society at the moment, is the deception that taxation is not theft, and that it's just some nebulous social contract that you signed as an infant child with the government. Yeah, I don't get the Ocasio-Cortez's hot thing. She wears a lot of eyeliner, and she has big psycho communist eyes, but I don't know. I like girls with big asses and big titties. I don't see any of that happening there. She's kind of a little communist waif, just wafting in the wind there. But yeah, so there's this moral relativism is kind of an opiate to even the most intelligent people. That's why Sam Harris was so anti-Trump, because he can't see the value in preventing the country from having the government grow in size. So, and having the government take over sectors of the economy. Because he doesn't have an objective sense of morality, and so everything is just about being nice and monotone and meditating, and Trump is the opposite of that. Trump is like sounding the alarm bell, is like, these people are insane, we can't let them take over the country. Put me in there, and I might be a unhinged asshole at times, but I'm not going to give the government control over the entire healthcare industry, or the entire college industry. I'm not going to have these radical takeovers of government takeovers of industry in the economy, and subsequently have them be radically inefficient and broken and fucked up, which is what happens once you understand the fundamental corruption that happens morally at the root of what the government is. Then you understand why things don't operate efficiently when they're run by the government, because there's no connection to the market forces that require you to be efficient and effective. Once you allow the government to steal people's money and then run programs like public school, you're automatically going to have a degradation of quality in the things that government does. And you see in the free market, like the most free market example in modern society has been the big tech companies. Recently, you've seen kind of a merger with government and kind of a decline in innovation as a result. But coming up, like Apple, with Steve Jobs and whatnot, you saw how effective capitalist investment and innovation can be. We didn't need a government program to buy the first iPhone. There had to be a first prototype for the iPhone, and there had to be really rich people willing to invest in it, and then 10 years down the line, you see everybody has an iPhone in their pocket, and it's super affordable. That's the kind of, because it's responsive to what the market wants. But when you see anything that's controlled by the government, you see prices going up and choices going down. Like we have a here in California at our apartment complex, we have a company called Yes Energy that supposedly handles our sewer and trash. Now, our prices have skyrocketed since the government has taken control over this service, and so we don't get a choice to choose any other competition. They chose one company to do the sewer and trash, and they filter it through this government agency, and so the prices go up, and we have no other choice but to comply with it. And whereas if there was other competition, we could choose somebody who was offering a better service for a lower price. Same thing with internet. I don't have any choice to not choose the internet I have. In the area I'm at, the big internet companies, the big ISPs, have divided up Los Angeles into certain sections. So in my section of Los Angeles, I can only get Spectrum, Time Warner Cable. That's my only choice. If I want internet, that's my only choice. And so, as a result, my the price of my internet monthly has gone up probably 20% in less than 2 years, and I can't do anything about it. That's my only choice. So you automatically get this stagnation, this lowering of quality, and also they were charging me for TV service that I didn't have. I never signed up for TV service. They were charging me for it for 6 months, and so I had to call them and get very belligerent on the phone and tell them to refund me. But they were just going to keep charging me. This is the kind of shit that I would have immediately canceled my service and gone with a competitor if I had found out that they'd been doing this. But I have no option to do that, and so as a result, they have no incentive to give a fuck. And so you're not going to get better quality service when you lower your choice. But it all comes from the fundamental corruption of incentives when you don't allow people choice. Over $60 a month. Yeah, for internet every month. It's pretty ridiculous. But it all stems from the taking away your choices. That's what government does. It knows best how to spend your money, and so it's taking away your free will. It's a lower grade level of slavery, because slavery means you give up 100% of what you make from your labor, and government means you give up 30 to 50% of your labor. And Ocasio-Cortez wants that to be 70%, and she's loving. But once that's why government inefficiency is just rampant, because they fundamentally don't have an incentive to provide good service because they're stealing your money. And so they don't fundamentally don't have to give a fuck how satisfied you are with the services they're providing. That's the slop you get in the government gulag, okay? You're gonna take your Spectrum internet, you're gonna take your public school, okay? And let's see, Rig says if your boss takes money made from your labor, is he partly responsible for stealing your money? I don't understand what you mean by takes money made from your labor. I mean, if you have a boss in a traditional employer-employee relationship, I mean, he's taken all the risk to start the company and hire you, and so he should be making more money than you because he's taken way more risk, and so he pays you, and you negotiate how much money you're going to make, and you come to an agreement based on how much value you're providing back to the business, and so he can compensate you adequately to what you agree upon in the negotiation. So yeah, ever since the atheists have done a great job of debunking the metaphysics of religion, there's been this kind of incoming moral relativism to try and take the place of religion, and it's all this murky, just be nice, don't be an asshole nonsense that has no standards and doesn't allow for self-defense. Whereas objective ethics, like you can start a good starting point principle is the non-aggression principle. And if you universalize the non-aggression principle, which most libertarians don't have the stones to do, then you end up at the end point that the government is an illegitimate institution that is initiating force against the population. And so then if you make that argument and you don't back down and you have your objective ethics and you stay committed, then you get the benefits of being called a cult leader. Like Joe Rogan called Stefan Molyneux as a cult leader, because Stefan Molyneux was making the argument that if you in long-term discussions with people, you make the arguments that the government violates the non-aggression principle, that its taxation is theft, and the Stefan Molyneux's against me argument really brings it down to a head and makes it crystal clear for people what the fuck is happening when you advocate for a government system. So if you advocate government policy that makes me go against my or just the objective ethics of the situation, you are advocating someone else get thrown in a cage for following basic morality. So if I don't want to pay my taxes because it's objectively morally wrong to have them extracted from me, then the government is going to want to throw me in a cage. Now, if I break that down to somebody and they still want to have me thrown in a cage, well then, can they really be your friend after you break it down to them and they're like, yeah, you don't want to fund Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's communist takeover? That's just, don't be an asshole, dude. Yeah, so that's the irony of the whole thing, is the people advocating for these systems are the actual assholes who want to enforce things upon you and not let you have your own free will. But that's viewed as, you know, don't be an asshole, man. You're gonna actually have standards in your life and hold people to standards and cut them out of your life if they tell you that they support you being thrown in a cage. You must be a cult leader. You're telling people to separate from their family. And it's like, you don't owe anybody your friendship and attention, you know. And that one of the most powerful things is social ostracism. To be able to enforce your own standards in your own life and have a line that people can't cross. Oh, sinuses are so plugged up today, ladies and gentlemen. What did Kashava say? How would the founding fathers dealt with these issues? Well, historically, looking back at the situation the founding fathers were dealing with, I mean, they were just trying to escape monarchy and tyranny. And so the system they set up was unbelievably, radically, so much better than what they had escaped from. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, if you grew up and your parents like beat the shit out of you with a belt and like just abused the shit out of you and it was horrific, and then like you have a kid and then you spank them a handful of times, it's like, yeah, it's objectively the same moral act, but it's a much smaller scale. So the initial government that was set up by the founding fathers, it's still illegitimate morally, but it's such a smaller scale from what they were living under previously. It's like, it's just it can only be viewed as a radical innovation. And but it's just, it's slid so far because of the propaganda against the West. The propaganda against the West is, oh, we're this big colonial empire tyranny that of hateful white people, and we just don't want loving communists like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and that's very hateful. Hold on, I'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Quick little Outrage Cast flow break here for the Chancellor. The Federal Outrage Chancellor, ladies and gentlemen. Here to bring in a tyranny of freedom. So, yeah, the atheists did such a good job of debunking the metaphysics of institutionalized religion that people have kind of slid off into this moral, relativistic, nihilistic nothingness. Because Jesus, for all intents and purposes, probably wasn't a magical zombie. That means that no objective ethics exist. Okay, that's the conclusion that most people have reached. And because they feel like Christianity is bullshit, the metaphysics at least, they throw out the morals as well. And yeah, there has to be an objective moral ethic that's agreed upon and that is universal. And we can't exclude the government from the moral principles that define what it is to be a good person. I see there was a little rift in the chat here. Rig says, whatever you have to tell yourself to justify wanting to kill people, Kashava. Compare NHS in UK to US healthcare system. NHS is better and government run, cheaper and covers a higher percent of the population. Well, my whole argument with that is there may be anomalies to it, but the more choice you offer people, the better their service is going to be. It's axiomatic. If you let healthcare industries compete against each other, or companies compete against each other, then you're going to have more choices to where to get your care. But if you let the government make a monopoly out of one of the companies, you're just going to have to deal with their service, whatever it is, and they can raise their prices. And whenever somebody can raise their prices with no consequences, they will raise their prices with no consequences. It's the same thing when we bailed out the banks. Expecting the banks to be better this time and not continue these horrific predatory lending practices is absurd, because we rewarded them for doing that very thing. They should have been allowed to fail. They should have been allowed to go out of business. And then the market would have corrected itself, and the new banks that came in and took the place of the old banks would know that they can't get away with that same bullshit. But now, have the direct opposite thing happening. We made those big banks untouchable, and so now, after making them untouchable, we expect them to have some kind of reform somehow, because government regulators, and it's a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature and incentives. If you don't give people an incentive to change, they're not going to change. Excuse me. All right, what else is going on out there in the world, ladies and gentlemen? What's good, Dirt Weed? How you feeling out there on a Saturday? Marines integrate male-female platoons during boot camp. Well, what could go wrong there? Oh, dude. Women can do anything that men can do. That's why you see the transgender Miss Universe contest. Men can also do anything women can do. There's no fundamental differences between the genders. And that's why, men can't just let women have beauty contests. We got to chop our cocks off and win that motherfucker. Right? But until I see women in the NFL, I don't think they should be, considered in the same squad as male Marines. It's a little ridiculous. I just feel like you're inviting some weakness into the military in general, and then a little bit of fraternization, shall we say, intermingling, we could say. Some genitalia tingling, perhaps, in the platoon ranks there. Oh, here we go. First openly bisexual senator sworn in. It's weird to me, like this celebration, like going along with the diversity syrup that we all have to guzzle here to be good people. It's like this celebration of just like categories achieving different things. Like, finally, we have a senator who fucks women and men. Like, as if that has any relevance to what their ideas are. Or, like, their idea for how the country should operate. It's like, what's really important is that she sucks dick and eats pussy. Finally, we have a senator who sucks dick and eats pussy. We've been waiting. You know, we could reduce the size of the government and have unbelievable prosperity and wealth, but instead, we're just going to concentrate on their gender and sexual orientation. And it doesn't matter what your ideas on, you know, the non-aggression principle are, or whether taxation is theft. What matters is what type of genitalia you like to play with. That's what needs to be celebrated in the halls of power. What up, Mr. Justin Potts? How you feeling out there? We're getting into the first bisexual senator and how this is a landmark moment for our country. Just shining beacon of diversity syrup that we're all guzzling down gleefully, okay? It doesn't matter your thoughts on the non-aggression principle. It doesn't matter on, you know, whether you think taxation is theft or whether, you know, we should have border security. What matters is that you suck dick and you eat pussy at the same time. It's super important. Super important for people in the halls of power to swing both ways. And that makes me feel good. That makes me feel good, so, you know, that's all that matters if you ask Sam Harris. If you meditate, feel good, suck dick, and eat pussy at the same time, that's the beacon of prosperity and success. Hashtag winning. Working that double shift, baby. Oh, yeah. So, Kirsten Sinema. Oh, and her dress draws attention. Oh, that's, you know, her sexual orientation is super important, but even more important, what dress she decided to wear while she was sworn in. And they have vaginas, also very important. What are her ideas? Are you going to tell me? Oh my God, her outfit. Oh my God, she's so cute. So cute when she's being sworn into Congress. Who cares what she thinks about socialism? Oh my God. This is the level of political discourse we're operating at. Andrew Kaczynski, a reporter for CNN, tweeted, one of the attacks from Republicans on Sinema during her campaign was she wore a pink tutu while protesting Iraq, which Republicans attempted to label as denigrating service members. I can't help but thinking this is an elaborate troll. Like, Her pink ensemble. Gives a fuck what color her ensemble is. The entire article has no content about her her political ideology. The contents of her brain less important than the color of her jacket, and how she feels about interacting with dick and vagina. Super important, dude. Let's just look it up for a goof. So Kirsten. Super annoying how she spells her name, by the way. Kirsten Cinema. Let's look up what she thinks about politics here. Let's investigate the contents of that brain there. Political positions. Sinema has been described as a centrist or moderate Democrat. Her votes place her near the center of their liberal-conservative scale. Gave her composite ideology of 50% liberal and 43% conservative. Blah, blah, blah. Sinema supports abortion rights. Does that include taxpayer-funded fetus deconstruction? She has a lifetime 100% rating from Planned Parenthood. Supports a woman's right to choose, but apparently not the taxpayer's right to choose whether or not to fund that fetus scrabbling there. All right, so not good so far. Economics. Sinema has voted for federal stimulus spending. Because people really need. They don't want to spend their own money. What they need is the federal government to stimulate them, because that's the big problem with for a country that's 20 plus trillion in debt. We just don't spend enough money in the economy. Everybody wants to save their money, and everybody has all these just giant coffers of money that they're saving, and they don't want to spend on anything, and they live like a miser. Oh, so the Keynesian idea of we need to stimulate the economy is so aggressively dumb. She has said, quote, raising taxes is more economically sound than cutting vital social services. A woman not concerned with raising taxes. How surprising. Vital social services. Well, if they were vital, then you would think they could be provided through the free market, and we'd have a lot more choice, and the prices would go down. But they're vital, so the government has to force people to fund them by stealing their tax money. That's the definition of vital. Let's see. So terrible in economics, terrible on abortion. Sinema has her sights set on advancing LGBTQ rights. She has a history of policy advocacy regarding LGBT. What rights do these people not have? It's all about this same-sex marriage. It's like, that's old news. Adding gender identity to anti-discrimination laws. Fun. So she wants to protect herself from criticism by, any criticism can be labeled under anti-discrimination laws. So if you don't want her to raise your taxes, you just hate bisexual people. That's what it comes down to, ladies and gentlemen. Guns. Oh, it just gets better. Guns. Cinema favors gun control measures. Ooh. Requiring a license for gun possession. Requiring background checks on gun sales between private citizens at gun shows. So if your uncle wants to sell you a gun, the government's going to need to check that situation out first. Okay? If you want to defend yourself, the government has to deem you acceptable. Okay? Which means you should never criticize anybody who's LGBTQ, and you need to fund abortion with your tax money, and you need to agree that the federal government needs to stimulate the economy, and $20 trillion in debt isn't deep enough. We're looking at 30 or 40 trillion, and that would be nice and loving and progressive. Justin Potts says, I don't have a problem with that one. Anyone buying a firearm should be checked out regardless. Well, the problem is with that is the subjectivity of some of these diagnoses of mental illness. If you let the government decide who is sane and who is insane, then if you have an anti-government philosophy, like we do here at the Federal Outrage Commune, that would probably be considered on the insane part of the spectrum by the government themselves. And so, you know, if I go to apply to get a gun here in California, you know, it's not outside the realm of possibility. They could YouTube or they could Google my name, find the Federal Outrage Cast here, and take any piece of satire I've done or anything that threatens the power structure and say that I'm mentally ill, right? And not let me have a gun. So I just think the solution to crazy people having guns is good people having guns. Because as crazy as some people might be, they recognize that if, you know, they get a little too aggressive, there might be repercussions. And even crazy people have usually have some level of you know, self-preservation instinct. And so I just think there has to be security measures in society, and you let good people defend themselves. And I just don't agree with giving the government the authority to decide who is crazy and who's not, because it's so subjective, you know. It's like the if a woman gets raped, abortion argument. Are you saying my argument's like that or your argument? I'm a little confused. If a woman gets raped, are you saying it's like the yeah, I guess there would be some kind of liability thing, like the gun salesman doesn't want the liability of like selling a gun to a crazy person. I don't know. They might label a crazy person if the woman gets raped. Yeah, I agree. It would be an anomaly, but I'm just saying if you let the government decide a subjective thing like that, then there's no end to the interpretations of it, and I just don't trust those people to make reliable decisions. I think there could be a non-government entity, like a private third party, that could do a background check and determine, like, if you have any violent history, or if you have any history of like legitimate physiological brain issues, or yeah, if you have something like physiologically wrong with you, and that can be determined objectively by a third party company, then I wouldn't be opposed to that. But my problem is the government and the subjectivity involved with labeling people crazy, because you know the government always really wants to label the smartest and most on target people as crazy, because they're the biggest threat to the power structure. So it's in their benefit to label those people as crazy. But yeah, it could easily be done in the free market with a third party company. You know, I just don't trust those dirty bureaucrats to evaluate my mental health, because I think they are all insane for seeking power like that anyway. So there's no background checks really for being elected to Congress that satisfy my curiosity. If I got to do a background check on this Kirsten Sinema, I would not let her anywhere near the levers of power, which are much more destructive and dangerous than some random individual having a gun. It's much more dangerous that, you know, she supports gun control and federal stimulus spending and raising taxes, which could result in, you know, an economic collapse. That's more dangerous to me than letting a potential crazy person get one gun somewhere. That's what I'm here doing at the Federal Outrage Cast. We're doing background checks, and we're determining the legitimacy of these people to hold power. All right, everybody. Unless we have any more questions or any more topics I want to cover, I might. I'm going on an hour 30 minutes here. Might wind it down, but I could keep going if we had any more questions or topics here. But I pretty much covered what was on my agenda for a beautiful Saturday here. Oh. Keshaba, please look into them links. Okay, you sent me one. Some YouTuber destroys women, quote unquote. He said smart men tricking women into the name of women's rights. Oh, is he talking about? Is he talking about the manufactured feminist movement where? You know, they told women they had to get into the workforce and abandon families, and yeah, and it's all a scheme to have another tax revenue stream through women and get them out in the workforce, and so they can have 2 tax incomes per household instead of just one. So that was very clever there. I don't think it was all necessarily centrally managed and it was pre-plotted in some giant conspiracy, but it kind of just worked out that way, and so yeah, it's a fundamental you know, misunderstanding of the value that men and women both contribute to the relationship, because like, yeah, I can understand women's desire to get out there in the world and achieve things and be on a level playing field with men, as far as, like, you know, rising in the ranks of a corporation and whatnot. But they're missing their greatest value in the world is like bringing life into existence through their body. They have a universal portal that brings consciousness into existence built into their body, but that's just boring and oppressive to have a kid and be dependent on a man. So what's really empowering is if you go and kill yourself trying to outcompete men in the workforce, and don't get in a relationship, don't have kids, and then you're 35 and your eggs are dead, and you're still working your way up the corporate ladder and having to take antidepressants to get out of bed every morning because you're so progressive. And so it's fundamentally destructive to women because they're overlooking their main beautiful contribution to society is like having kids and raising great kids and being great mothers. But that's kind of looked down upon now. And also the economy is we're such on a razor thin edge. Like you kind of need 2 income sources in a household now to even get by. And so, yeah, it all feeds into itself. But I could see, the first wave of feminism for women's suffrage and whatnot. That was kind of necessary. That they should be treated, and given the opportunity to participate in the political process. But you see what they've done with it once they got the vote. We got the welfare state. We got skyrocketing debt, and then just the government safety nets coming in and perverting the incentives of the entire economy, and it's kind of cascaded into a disaster. And so they've kind of fumbled their opportunity there to be, intelligent, rational voters in society. But yeah, it's there's no reason for feminism anymore. The women already have every right that men have, and even more. Men generally can't go to the family courts and divorce their wives and get alimony. So there's no rights left that men have that women don't. Let's not forget the men about the men who don't need no man. Then the little tyke grows fucked up in the head because he didn't have a father figure to learn from. Yeah, they don't need no man, but they're definitely taking that welfare check that's financed by all the men paying taxes. So if you don't have a dad there, you just replace the dad with the government, and society deconstructs and cascades downward, swirling the toilet bowl from there. And yeah, raising a kid without a dad is just horrifically destructive to the kid. And you're not going to be able to have the time to be a quality worker or a quality mom. And so everything degrades. And, it's all bad. It's all bad, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I think we got a good little wrap in on a Saturday afternoon. Felt good to me. I got through the sinus issues here. I got a pile of paper towel wads in front of me, and we're getting them sinuses cleaned out. We're trying to clean the government sinuses of corruption, and point out the tyrants responsible. All right, so yeah, look it up, Outrage Cast on all the podcast apps, on iTunes and everything. At Nick Jordan himself on Instagram, at I am Nick Jordan on Twitter. Nick Jordan on Facebook. We'll share everything out there, and we'll keep it rocking for you. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for commenting. Like it if you like it. Share it out if you want to share it. Subscribe if you're not already. And yeah, you beautiful motherfuckers out there, keep rocking it out in the free world while we still have it left. All right. I'll see you beautiful motherfuckers tomorrow. Big kiss, ladies and gentlemen. Peace out to the Federal Outrage crew. Have a lovely Saturday, and I'll catch you tomorrow.